Welcome to the TTS Talking Educators podcast. Each week, we'll be joined by educational experts from across the globe, offering exclusive insights, inspiration, and guidance to help practitioners unlock the potential for learning in the primary and early years. Hello, my name is Mark Loveday, your host for this week's TTS Talking Educators podcast. I'm the headmaster of Fruin College, an independent co-educational day and boarding school for students aged 7 to 19, specialising in dyslexia and co-occurring specific learning difficulties. I'm a specialist teacher at SLE, specialist leader education for SEND, and have taught across primary, secondary and sixth form in both mainstream and specialist settings, holding a variety of leadership roles. I've previously set up and led SEND advisory teaching services, been responsible for the creation of diagnostic pathways for dyslexia, dyscalculia and dyspraxia, and created and led an alternative provision for students experiencing emotional-based school avoidance, which went on to win Alternative Provision of the Year in 2023. I'm also a board director for the Specific Learning Difficulties Assessment Standards Committee, SASC, a trustee of a multi-academy trust, and I'm a national and international speaker. Throughout the series, we'll be discussing a range of topics aimed at supporting SEN in primary settings, inspiring you with guidance and resources to enhance your practice. I'm delighted to welcome Beccie Hawes back today as today's guest. Beccie, welcome back. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me yet again. And how are you, Mark?
I'm brilliant. Thank you very much. I can't believe where the time is disappearing to.
No.
We're already on the third podcast, but really lovely to see you. Could you just give a quick introduction about yourself for our listeners?
Of course, I'm Beccie Hawes, the proud CEO of Cadmus Inclusive. We're a not-for-profit organisation based in Walsall in the West Midlands, and we provide a range of services to schools and educational settings, including SEND advice and consultation. We've got sports mentors, counsellors, speech and language therapists and support dogs that come into work with us. We refer to ourselves as the battle unicorns because we're ready to go in there and do what needs to be done for our children in the most magical of ways and hopefully create a few sparkle moments as we go.
I'd love that. Battle unicorn.
The battle unicorn.
I'm hoping you've all got appropriate unicorn costumes.
Completely. We've got headbands and everything and magic wands.
That's good to hear. Well, bringing it back. In this episode, we will focus on how practitioners can kind of promote those social skills and encourage those important peer interactions for our students and young people with autism. So should we start really around those kind of tricky social situations that often so many of our young people experience and how we can support that?
Yeah, I think the first thing we often assume is that children must have friends and must have a social group and it must look like this. When actually sometimes our children and young people, they're quite happy. They're okay. I've got some class friends. Yeah, that's all right. But actually at playtime, when I'm playing on my own, I'm decompressing from being in a room of 29 others with the teacher, having to follow some very unspoken and mysterious social rules. So I think sometimes we've got to, first of all, is that actually what we want for this young person? More importantly, is it what they want? Are they in a place to accept a relationship, whether that be just a grunt and a nod, all the way through to a best friend? And have they got the skills that they need to navigate that? So I think the very first thing before I get into tricky situations and how to support is around just honouring the fact that some of our young people, that's not on their mood board for today, and that actually is okay. But then we also have to balance that with the fact that, as humans, we're meant to be social creatures. We're designed to be part of a pack. So it's kind of learning what those rules are. And I think it's really funny because on the whole, I say this, I love everybody I work with. I love my family, but I like dogs and books more than people. So often, sometimes my children that I work with resonate with me because I think, yeah, actually, you know what? I get it. And sometimes I can find social situations very difficult. So I teach our children to be good observers and to have a look at the situation, see what's happening and work out why that might be, what that means, and then what might we have to do to respond to that. So it's a bit like teaching the scripts, that we have to do it in a very neuro-affirming way. I think that's really, really important, because what we don't want to do is to neurotypical and neurodivergent children. We have to go, actually, this is you. You are remarkable and incredible and just perfect as you are. But to help you in these situations, this is kind of what this means. And here are some responses that you might want to choose from and give, but not at the detriment of your mental health. I've seen children desperately trying to make eye contact, sit still, track their teacher, to the detriment of them being able to learn, because that is all that they can focus on. So we have to accept that actually the social exchange from an autistic person might look different, and that's okay too.
Absolutely. And I think you've really raised a really core point there around actually we are putting those social norms onto our young people. Actually, they, as you rightly point out, they may be very happy with the isolated play because it's that time of deep depression, and actually we're adding to that stress bucket by actually trying to get them to engage, but seeing that as a very different to how can you engage in situations where you do need to be working with other people, for example, in a mainstream classroom.
And I think something I'm big on is the collaborative play-based approaches, so that children can work together, but in a natural way, and that we can sort of teach in the here and the now and the moment, as opposed to perhaps a traditional social skills group. So I think in a traditional social skills group, what happens, often you get 6 of the students with the biggest profound social skills needs. You put those 6 together, and then you wonder why it doesn't work, when actually what we need is some kind of, let's get a mixture of children with different social skills together. So we've got something to play off. We've got role models to look at. We've got natural play, and I can get in there and join in that natural play to do the teaching, as opposed to let's sit in a circle and pass the eye contact round, because that just isn't natural. That's not what we do in real life. So I think it's about making it meaningful, perhaps use things that your students really interested in, and use that as your starting point to bring a play partner in and to develop and to grow it from that.
Completely. I mean, I think that a perfect example would be not getting so hung up on terms of intervention. Thinking, something like Lego therapy, for example. The whole idea of bring a play partner in before you're actually sat there going, right, this is what we're doing, these are your roles, because actually that young student's going, but I don't really want to do that. I can build it myself, thanks. And it is about thinking actually the interventions. I think this is across the board. The interventions there as a guide and a framework to support those non-specialists, but not necessarily, and shouldn't be that, oh, let's turn the page now to the next.
And I think it's been brave. It's actually, with all your consents and your policies followed, going to the shop. It's about going for a walk in the park. It's about kicking a football. It's about doing it in the here and now, in a real situation. Because what happens is I get children and young people who are brilliant at giving me the right answers in that group, but the minute they walk away, it's all gone. So if I'm teaching those social skills in a natural, everyday setting, then that's going to work, because it becomes transferable and something that we do. A big thing I did with one of my children at home was we used to watch EastEnders and Sky Plus it so that I could pause it. And the reason why is, if you think about Danny Dyer's Face and Phil Mitchell, we could watch something building up and it all getting a bit tasty, and we'd pause it and I'd be like, what do you think is going to happen next? What do you think he's going to do? Let's see. And then we'd watch, real life EastEnders play out. It's learning to read the room, isn't it? And it's narrating. And I think wondering aloud is a fantastic strategy. I'll just stand next to children, next to them on the playground, and go, oh, look, that child over there, he's got a plaster on his knee. Oh, he looks really sad. What do you think's happened there? Or what could we do? Let's go over and see if he's okay. I wonder if. And I think that, helps.
But I think it also dovetails really nicely into that I wonder, also in terms of that therapeutic approach, because quite often it's a real challenge to unpick, say, attachment versus ASC. And the overarching approach that could be purposeful would be that wonder and those conversations, that kind of that out loud narrative.
And I think sometimes if you think about the social skills, it's invisible. You just kind of learn how to behave at that party or at someone's house, or if you've, got to speak to the bank manager, you just kind of pick it up, but not everyone does. So wondering aloud makes the invisible visible, so that you're giving that autistic person something to work with.
Absolutely. And also kind of that narrative around this is what we do in terms of this process. So it's like talking it through, isn't it? Like you said, in so many situations, using the example of your young person going to the Chinese takeaway. It's talking it through, isn't it? It's where you'll be going. And actually, when we get there, sometimes people like to read the magazine as they're waiting, but not everybody likes to read that magazine.
And making it clear that actually you've got a choice. So, okay, most people are doing that. You don't have to. You can sit quietly. You could go on your phone. You could just look out of the window till they call your number. But then it's important that those choices are offered. So it's not, when you go there, you sit, you do this. When you go here, X doesn't always equal Y, does it? There's always a messy equation somewhere in the middle. So it's about teaching the grey areas too, the what to do if. But also the what to do if it's too much and it's too hard. Is that where you need to sort of self-advocate, and how do you do that effectively in that social situation? I'm sorry, I'm just finding this a little bit difficult right now. Can I just pop off for 5 minutes and I'll come back? It's those kinds of things.
Absolutely. And I think, it's about this practitioners understanding actually what doesn't mean. So, you often talk to schools where they said, well, you've got to get out cards. They have to put the symbol on the table. And actually, at that moment in time, your cognitive brain is not processing, I need to be putting this on the table.
And if you think about it as adults in a work situation, we do it really well because we'll pop to the bathroom, we'll go and fetch a coffee. We've got lots of really subtle coping strategies that are universally accepted, and we can get away with it because we're grown-ups. But our children in classrooms can't necessarily, because you're stuck in that history lesson. You sit there, you don't move, and these are our learning to learn behaviours. And I'm not saying we rip that up straight out the window, but I'm saying we're flexible with that. I think that's really, really, really important.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that whole what is learning, isn't it? It comes back down to that real understanding there. Thinking about this kind of the modelling approach that we've talked about, and also the fact that actually for some of our young people, they are more than happy with their little world. What challenges, how do we unpick those challenges, and what might those challenges be for, say, our mainstream colleagues, where actually, playtime, where you've got young people who want to be doing isolated play or actually having that time just to decompress, versus those students outside, and also thinking about the buddy benches and budding up, and actually the pros and the cons attached to that.
I think when I took my son who has autism to visit his secondary school, the Senko was incredible and put an awful lot into his transition, and spent some time explaining that at break time and lunchtime, we've got a safe space available for students. It looks like this. Would you like to go and have a look? So, I'll go and have a look. And he stood by the door and he looked at me and he went, I don't want to be in there. I was like, oh, okay. I said, I want to be out with the rest of the students doing what they do. This is not for me, but thank you. And I was like, oh, it's a bit awkward, but I get it. It's actually offering those choices, isn't it? It's about looking and saying, if you feel you need it, there is a safe space here. There are buddies available here. There are these things and these things, but not assuming that that's what that person wants and or needs, actually. And I think I've got one school in particular that springs to mind here. Their playtime offer is incredible. And interestingly, it's not just been positive for the children with autism, it's been positive for all of the children. So they've got particular zones. There's a mad zone where you can go and blast a football and run riot and scream and blah. There's another quiet area with some sensory tools, book boxes, little dens that you can hide in. There's another area with some jigsaws and board games outside. So if you're feeling cooperative and that's your bag, that's for you. And you watch the children naturally gravitate. And I think it's really interesting. Not all of the children stay in the same area. Some of them will go and let them go wild and have 5 minutes, then retreat and go and decompress. But the children just stay and play a board game. So I think it's choice, isn't it? And it's making it okay. Because if you think about it, at a party, not everyone wants to get on the dance floor, do they?
Yeah. I think you're spot on in terms of it's okay. I think actually if we track through and we look at going back to the number of children out of education and the underpinning, whether it's diagnosed or not, tends to have a neurodiverse need somewhere. And that falling down about year 8, year 9, but we've also got to be thinking about those two very different models, haven't we, about what can be offered in a really good inclusive primary school might not have the same core offer in secondary, but it so easily can't it? I mean, we take the playtime example. That is something that could so easily be set up in a secondary environment.
Yeah, and it doesn't, sometimes I think students in secondary school particularly are great at leading it themselves. And it gives them so much confidence and advocacy and agency, which I think for some autistic students, they're done to, not done with. And I think we then start to, in lessons, you have to have this. This is your intervention for that. And now we'll structure your social time too. Where does that begin and end? Actually, when do you get to be you and be your best autistic self? And I think that's something I think is really important. And I learned this very early on as a mum of an autistic child. I had to very quickly accept that he didn't want to do the conversation when he came home from school. He didn't want to tell me that maths was great and his teacher had done that and here's my project on the Romans. He just wanted to go upstairs and decompress from peopling all day. And I was trying too hard to structure and do all these things, and it actually caused further anxiety. So what's actually needed is to just step back and go, do you know what? There's your time and space to be autistic, and that is okay.
Absolutely. And quite often, biggest need, particularly with our younger ones, the older ones if they're being picked up from school as well, it's around just being able to get in that car and maybe just have some music and decompress and not have, what did you have for lunch? How did you get on with this today? How do you remember, and no matter how much of a parent you want to be, I want to find out about your day. It's really important. It's also about giving them that space.
Yeah, and my big thing was I actually question myself, who's the conversation really for then? I think it's for me, so I know he's safe and well and happy, because that's what a mum does. Yeah, but actually it was, the upshot was the complete opposite. So that's why I think we don't put it into a timetable. I think I hate it when I see children who've got a special interest in something and their timetable that special interest in. You can do maths. Now you're allowed to be autistic for 10 minutes. Now we've got English. Now we can, no, actually, because this person is autistic all of the time. So it's about honouring that and letting them be their best, unapologetic, authentic self all of the time.
Absolutely. And then talk to them with that skill set, doesn't it? Like you rightly point out. I mean, moving to the kind of final bit that'd be really good to unpick is really around bullying and empathy. And I know an awful lot of schools struggle with this, particularly where that kind of behaviour may become quite dysregulated.
Yeah. And we've set up something that our schools purchase as a package from us, which has had tremendous results. We call it our All Kinds of Minds project. And with that, we go into schools and we run neurodivergence, not awareness, but acceptance sessions. There's a big difference in the words there. And we unpick those two words with our children and young people. And we get 4 and 5-year-olds who get this concept completely, and it's perfectly transferable. That they understand that actually being aware is one thing, I have to be aware to keep safe to cross the road, I have to be. But if I accept something, if I truly try and understand it, value it on face value, and don't want to change that person as a result of that. So through the All Kinds of Minds project, we've seen some incredible friendships blossom because children start to walk a mile in each other's shoes, and they start to then recognise that actually the world can be tough, scary and hard, not just for autistic people, but for everyone. And we all face our challenges. And if we understand and accept those challenges, we can then support each other. When we talk about what being a good friend looks like for that particular person or those particular needs. And we've also supported children and young people who've been brave enough to want to educate their class. So we've facilitated assemblies led by our students. We've supported PSHE, RSE lessons supported by our children, leading them, getting out there and saying, actually, I have autism and this is what my life is like as a result. And here are my super strengths, but here are my things I find tricky too. And this is how I really would value you helping me.
And that's really important. And I think that's a really lovely end to this podcast. It's very much around this acceptance, not awareness, both for the individual, but as people as well as practitioners. That awareness of need, yes, but that acceptance, this is this young person, and let's celebrate that. So thank you, Beccie.
Thank you.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to our guest, Beccie, for joining us and providing such valuable insights. You've been listening to the TTS Talking Educators podcast with me, Mark Loveday, and Beccie Hawes. If you've been inspired by our conversation today, don't forget you can sign up via the link in our episode notes to be the first to hear about future episodes and access exclusive follow-up content, including ideas for your settings and links to relevant resources.